So let's just add this slide over here. So can I just start off by saying a very big thank you to Chris for inviting Derek today. Obviously, Chris will be properly introducing Derek fairly shortly. Today's session is about the power secrets of professional networking, which is going to be a great topic, and it's also very complementary to what we do as well, Derek, as well, which no doubt you will...
Rupert.
Sorry?
Negotiation, Rupert, not networking.
Oh, sorry, did I say? I'll say that again. The power secrets of professional negotiating. Again. Right, so thank you for correcting me on that one. And if you, those of you who are joining us today, if you could very kindly indicate in the chat what you're really passionate about, why you do what you do, and also Derek's told me beforehand he loves really difficult questions. So please keep those coming. Very keen to hear what everyone's got to say. In terms of a little bit of introduction, in terms of what we specialize in, we want to make a difference and be known for helping companies and organizations to amplify their brand, bring ourselves forward, and also help them to get their time back. A little bit of an introduction from myself personally. Business Growth Bureau was formed about 7 years ago. I'd love to say it was all my idea. It actually came from the CEO of a charity that we're doing a lot of informal work with. I believe in the importance of circular relationships, and I know Derek's going to be talking a lot about the win-win part of things as well. Obviously very complementary. Chris, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit and what you specialize in?
Yeah, sure. Chris Cooper. I specialize in working with leaders, helping them to elevate their performance, develop their teams, and build highly engaged and successful workplaces. So I work with a lot of organizations, particularly in insurance at the moment, and also we do a lot of work in education. And I also set a goal when I was 40, actually, that I wanted to help over 1 million people beyond my client base. So I've had a radio show on Voice America now for nearly 10 years, which is really widely listened to. And I'm just coming up to my 400th unique sort of interview. So just before the show, I was writing some of the highlights to that. And I co-wrote a book called The Power to Get Things Done, whether you feel like it or not. That's me.
Lovely. A very relevant book as well for these times too, I'd imagine, in terms of helping people to stay motivated. Now, Derek, would this... Sorry, I get that time back in my mouth again. Chris, would you like to introduce Derek at this point as well?
I would indeed. I'm really delighted to have Derek on today. Derek and I have known each other for, I don't know, maybe 10 years, possibly now, something like that. And I met Derek. He was the national president of the Professional Speaking Association. He's a real legend. He's known as you know, the negotiation expert in the country. In fact, when he wrote this particular book, Win-Win, Pearson actually searched around the globe for the most experienced expert on negotiation and approached him and asked him to write it. So he studied as well. He's ex Barclays, I think, from his career. But he went to Harvard to study with the top negotiation experts over there. And he's a good guy. I mean, the only thing mid-table about him is his football team, Arsenal. But I'm sure soon, Derek, they're going to be flying high again at the top of the Premiership or Championship. Very soon.
Yeah.
So really good to have Derek on. One thing I'll say, a little story about him was, I remember I was doing a charity event which we've mentioned a few times, a quadrathlon a couple of years ago, and Derek called me up and said, "Your target's not big enough. You need to put a bigger target down for your charitable contribution." And I followed his advice, and then he gave me a whopping great contribution, which really was really appreciated. So he's a very kind and genuine guy as well.
Lovely. Thank you very much. What a perfect introduction that is. So, Derek, you've got a lot to live up to, I'm afraid, as part of today's session. Do you want to give a little bit of introduction in terms of these 6 points you're going to cover today as well? And what I'll do is I'll remove this slide in just a moment so we can focus on just you and Chris. So...
Are you talking to me or to Derek?
Let's talk to Derek, yeah. So if that's all right. Are you happy to introduce those 6 points, Derek?
If you leave them up there, yeah, so that I can remember exactly what I said to a month ago, because I've been on about 10 chat shows this week, so I'm ready to go. But leave that up there if you want me to mention that. Okay, guys. Well, Chris, thanks very much for your introduction. Thanks, Rupert, for saying that I was going to speak about networking. I didn't know that until about 5 minutes ago. But if you want me to speak about networking and negotiation, that's very important, because actually, if you don't have a big network, how are you going to find out the information that you need in a professional negotiation? So I encourage people to use LinkedIn like mad, and use LinkedIn for an advantage. And I want to just mention, before I go through those 6 points, that if I was negotiating, Rupert, with any of your guests, I would be looking them up on LinkedIn, looking at their profile, taking something away where we might have a connection, so I can build rapport quickly, because people give better deals to people they like. So if we've got a connection, we've got rapport, then that will work. So if people haven't got a good professional LinkedIn profile, they ought to get one pretty quickly, because that would be a real advantage. And while Chris talks about my book Win-Win, which he very kindly mentioned, Pearson found me via LinkedIn and then researched all my websites, which I'd be delighted for other people to look at. But let's talk about the power secrets of professional negotiation. One of the mistakes people make when they're negotiating is they think they're in a weaker position than they really are. This is a psychological barrier. It's linked to the imposter syndrome, which I'm sure you've talked about, where people think, oh, it's not, this is going to be a bit tricky and a bit difficult. What I do is I help people change the power within the negotiation by thinking through what options they have, what other options they have, because you basically need 3 options when you're negotiating. If you don't have 3 options, how have you got power? And if you were just going to buy a car or a suit or anything like that, then you clearly need to have at least researched the other 2 cars that you might buy that are in competition with the one that you're negotiating with the car dealer. Clearly, it's number 2 is clearly important to ask vital questions and listen with your 2 ears and your 2 eyes that you've got to listen with, which brings us on to number 3, reading the body language, reading the signals. It's 5 times more difficult to lie with the body language than it is with the words. Just look at the professional liars that we've seen recently, particularly leaving the White House on a helicopter yesterday morning. Spot Shark Tank tactics. The whole point of a negotiating tactic is to get people down to their walk-away position as fast as possible, and even get them lower than their walk-away position and convince them that they could do it even cheaper. So knowing the psychology of the tactics, and I write about 35 tactics in my book Win-Win, that understanding them, knowing how to handle them, knowing whether it's just a common ploy or basically you're dealing with sharks. Because if you are dealing with sharks, you need to ask yourself, should you be doing business with them anyway? And then the lesser known facts of influencing, the work of Robert Cialdini, the psychologist that wrote the book Influence, Science and Practice. And then finally, techniques to increase your confidence. So as long as we've got 3 hours, I can get through all those points, Chris and Rupert, in no time at all.
Thank you. I'm going to leave you in Chris's very capable hands. I'm also going to move this slide. So over to you, Chris, to ask the questions, if that's all right.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rupert. And I think it fits in with one of your cogs, Rupert. I think you within your system as well, around which is linked in with negotiation. Now, the 3rd cog, I think. I can't remember what the 3rd cog is, though. So wish you'd stayed. But anyway, I'm just really interested, Derek, is everything a negotiation, and is everything negotiable?
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. This is a mistake that people make. They don't realize they're in a negotiation, or they're in the beginning of a negotiation when they're with people. Now, actually, if there's 2 people and you have something which you have a difference of opinion on, or where you want to go on holiday with your partner, what your kids want to do, then you're in a negotiation. So you should be thinking it's a negotiation. And also in your business and your life, everything's a negotiation as well. So I'm a serial negotiator, as you know. I negotiate everything. Some people think that's pretty pathetic. Well, it is pretty pathetic negotiating in Marks and Spencer's and Tesco's. I agree with that, but I still want my club card points. And in Sainsbury's, I want my Nectar points. And if I'm using my credit card, I'm using my BA points, or I was. I'm not sure I'll be flying BA in a rush for my American Express points. So I'm looking at every angle at all. So everything is a negotiation, and everything is negotiable. And that's a mindset. And I know you've talked on a lot of your shows about mindset, and it is the mindset of knowing that and not backing off, and then knowing how to handle it in a gentle way that doesn't create too much conflict. So if I just gave you a quick example of that, one of the things you might say to somebody is, that's a bit more expensive than I was expecting to pay. Is there anything you can do to help me? Now you'll notice the way I leaned in, looked down the camera, because negotiating on Zoom is very important to us going forward. Zoom's not going to go away, and virtual media is not going to go away. And I just kind of turned my head and connected. And is there anything you can do to help me? Because you can lower your voice. If you lower your voice tone, you can say something that the other person might perceive as aggressive or in conflict without them taking that conflict. Whereas if I said, is there anything you can do to reduce the price, Chris, because it's a bit expensive? Is there anything you can do to reduce the price because I perceive it's perhaps a bit expensive? So yeah, a couple of tips there, Chris.
We can approach this subject then with a degree of kindness. This is not going into battle with people. It's actually making it a more sort of gentle and flowing and seamless process.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just had a little negotiation with my son, actually, next door, my youngest son, to turn his Xbox off because he was making a bit of noise and using bandwidth up next door. And the negotiation ended with me turning it off at the mains. I'm not sure I've given him anything in return.
No, I don't think that's a win-win, Chris, actually. But as you're running your business and he's playing with his Xbox, I think you've got the power there, and you've got the switch, so you've got the power. Yeah. No, it's not. And those sort of words like battle and fight and those red words that Trump's used a lot in the last week, and I've been analysing all Trump's language, are just not really there for the negotiation. But if you ever read Donald Trump's book that he wrote 20 years ago about negotiating, everything is a battle, and frankly, you treat the other person as a loser. Now, that isn't win-win negotiation. That doesn't make the world go round, and it will get you into big trouble eventually.
Well, I think one of the things I found interesting when Trump, which his inauguration speech, when he's his words, his banner became America first, and my first reaction to that was, doesn't feel very win-win for everybody else who's dealing with him. I mean, that's immediately left me feeling uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
From your perspective, should we always be aiming to make negotiations win-win?
Yeah, because otherwise it comes back and bites you. I mean, in our previous lives, my previous life in Barclays and yours, Chris, in big business, we met people that did behave like that. They didn't behave win-win, or, they behaved win. It wasn't even win-lose, it was win. I just want to win. I don't care about you. And actually, we pick that up very quickly, don't we? If people don't care about us, aren't interested, don't listen to us, have just got their own agenda. So yeah, no, it's really important. You want the other person to come away feeling that they got a good deal. One of my clients in Barclays was Body Shop. I was quite close to Gordon Roddick, the chief executive, and he said to me once, I asked him about negotiation. He knew I wrote about it and taught at the business school about it. And I asked him, I said, what do you consider a good negotiation for Body Shop? Retailers are pretty aggressive. He said to me, when both sides come away with a feeling that they actually gave a bit more away than perhaps they had to, but at the end of the day, it was a good business transaction, and they've been doing business with the person further, and they liked the person and respected them for their tough but fair win-win stance.
Yeah, yeah. I used to work for the Mars organization many years ago, and the challenge is going into big retail, into the Tesco's and Sainsbury's, and dealing with their buyers. They were very quite tough places to be, really. But the challenge is that if you're not win-win, is that you put your supply chain at risk, don't you? And you also, if you're not kind to people, they remember it, don't they? And you don't get the energy back from your suppliers that you might do if you hadn't tried to cut every corner. So it does bite you. Just bite you in the end.
If you pull a fast one on someone, generally in their mind and psychologically, they'll never forget it.
Yeah.
And if you turn up at another company or you ask for a favor and you've run your emotional bank account down, as Stephen Covey says, they won't do you a favor. You need to have some credit in the emotional bank account, and people come round. And we talked about LinkedIn already. We meet people from 20 years ago and we don't forget, actually, if they pulled a fast one on us.
No, I had one of those ask me for a testimonial, and I was quite uncomfortable, thinking, you're one of the last people in the world I ever want to give this to.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to just say there that reciprocity is a two-way street. So whilst reciprocity works in negotiating, giving things away for nothing that don't cost you very much, if people don't return the favor or say thank you or be nice to you, you tend never to forget that as well. And I'm not saying that we just give concessions away, because when you're haggling, the rules are, if I do this for you, what will you do for me? But reciprocity is a two-way street. And as you know, I was chairman of the Speaking Association for 5 years, and some people were rude to me on emails and rude to me to my face because they weren't getting their own way, and they think that they can get away with that. And I never forgot that. It was just, I was doing a win-win job for nothing. And if people are rude to you, well, how? It's crazy, isn't it? It's daft.
It is. I mean, interestingly, you've got a very successful podcast as well. Yours, I think, is linked around negotiation. And what I find quite amazing is when occasionally you get guests who barely, you put a lot of effort in, you do a great interview with them, and they barely say thank you. And it's almost sometimes, you're honoured to have me on your show, really. And I mean, I avoid all those people now, and I don't get them, and I see through them and avoid them. But there's certain people I had in the early days of my show, that I now wouldn't want to help particularly, because they just didn't acknowledge the effort I put in and the fact I was funding the thing. And you must be the same too. You get a sense of people, and what they don't realise is actually how connected you are.
How
many amazing people I know and who we speak to.
I can tell you that there's about 10 people that come on my show live, and they are trainers or speakers, and not one of them has ever said thank you to me. So I kind of think that they're coming on, grabbing all the material, and thinking I don't realise what they're doing. I mean, I did a negotiation in Hungary. I spoke in Hungary, and this firm didn't pay me, and I had to decide whether I was going to get on the plane or not at Heathrow, because it's best to be paid up front in a negotiation where you give your value and try and get paid afterwards if you don't know the people. And I immediately became suspicious when there were 7 of their trainers in the back of the room taking copious notes on everything I was saying on the one-day masterclass. And I became, I knew that they were just taking my material, Chris, but we're a bit off the subject there, but it's interesting because these are all negotiation issues.
It's reciprocity for everybody who's listening here. If you're kind to people and also you're grateful, they're grateful for you. And I'll go over and above with people who've really showed that sort of gratitude. And indeed, you're here because of our relationship and because of my experiences of you. Now, I want to just also just ask, if when you're maybe preparing yourself for a negotiation or whatever, what are the things that will determine that maybe you need to think of beforehand that will determine whether you gain success?
Okay, well, key is research and preparation, and the statistics say that the average person spends 10 minutes preparing for a big negotiation. And in fact, you and I would spend more than 20 times, because if it's that important, it's bottom line money that we're talking about. And so I would, well, I'd look online like mad. I'd look back in the files or what happened before. I'd call people that had negotiated with them. I'd look on LinkedIn, and then I'd mind map. Then I'd mind map all the facts. What's the objectives of the negotiation goes at 1 o'clock, and what's the outcome goes at 11 o'clock. And then I put all the facts down. And I'd be doing this a week before, so that I had time to reflect on it, think about it, ring other people, find out who knows who, and then I'd send an agenda the day before to the client, to the person, putting down what I wanted to discuss. One of the most important things would be, and what would they want to add to the agenda, because that means no surprises in the meeting. You know, we talked about some of those big retailers who put you in a room, the negotiators room. I think it was at Sainsbury's, the negotiators room, before you get called up for your 10 minutes with their buyer, just to intimidate you. Probably wasn't Sainsbury's. I probably said the wrong thing, but yeah. So all that, and then taking someone with you if it's important, so they can listen to exactly what's being said while you're under pressure. We can't think straight when we're under pressure, and to notice the body language, which you might not notice, which is more of a right brain skill than a left brain skill. So and so then you take a break, you take a time out, and you find out what the other person on your team thought about it, what their view was, what's their intuition, what's their gut feel about what we should do. And if you do that, I guarantee you will not reduce your price under pressure as much as you would have done if you were sitting there on your own trying to analyze it and feeling, actually, I'm under so much pressure, I just want to get out of here, which is a pretty natural skill, despite what some alpha male and alpha female people will tell you. When we're in a negotiation, it is emotional. If it's important to us, we are under pressure, and therefore our confidence won't be perhaps as high as we think it is. And remember, Chris, no one comes back and tells you they got a crap deal in a negotiation. They'll always say it was a nightmare and really difficult, but in the end I got a good deal. I think
I did have a number of years in running procurement divisions in companies, and then I set up a procurement consultancy with partners, and we grew that to 25 staff. And so I was involved in some very good big negotiations, particularly around advertising and media, and I did a lot of time negotiating hundreds of thousands of tons of flour and materials and all sorts of things. I've got a real kind of sense about this, and I would say, some people fail to plan for a pitch. The successful ones plan for pitches, don't they? You've got to put the same amount of time, haven't you, into a negotiation? Otherwise, it can make a big huge difference. And that money on the bottom line that you're saving is equivalent to profit, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, it is profit. Yeah,
it's a lot of profit if you lose it.
Yeah, absolutely. And with your own personal negotiations, if you save something on your costs, that's actually a tax-free. That's tax-free. That's why I love it. Bring it on. Legally tax-free. I just can't believe that people don't ask. And if you don't ask, you don't get. And it's how you ask is the trick in negotiation. Is drop your voice and say, it's a bit more expensive. Is there anything you can do to help me, or something like that in rapport? So yeah, you're bang on there, Chris. And when do you think we're going to be able to negotiate a haircut? That's what really bothers me.
Yeah, I've got a 14-year-old son who's been cutting mine.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
it looks like a fiver as well. No, he does a good job. He does well. So
you only said that because he's listening in the background. I know, don't worry.
Yeah, I'm very grateful to him. Actually, it's easier than doing your own.
Okay. Brilliant.
So what happens when you maybe go into a negotiation with slightly underhand tactics going on? Yes, I mean, that's a good point. Lower chairs, isn't it? I know they still do that in some. I interviewed a guy who was an attorney in Honywood and works with big, representing stars, and they have big negotiations. And in fact, he was actually chunking the Goonies. guy called Jeff B. Cohen, a fabulous guy, but still they have, you know, lower chairs and higher chairs, you know, and they use all of that kind of psychological approaches to try and get a better deal. And it still does happen, unfortunately.
I know. I just lowered my chair to make you feel more confident negotiating with me, just to actually demonstrate with the people on the call. I mean, there are some really silly tactics which are almost childish, but the real trick, and let me come up again. I'm feeling a bit intimidated by you. The real trick is to understand what the tactics are. So recognize the tactics, and more than 50 people don't even recognize a tactic for what it is. They allow themselves to be intimidated. Once you've recognized the tactic and those people that you're dealing with use those tactics, then perhaps you can deal with it. But as part of the preparation, I mean, part of people's preparation on this interview is listening to the interview and playing back the recording, and perhaps even buying my book, dare I say, because there's 35 of these tricks and tactics that are going to be used on you. I recorded with Surrey University Business School a video where I got an actor to play 20 negotiating tactics on me, and one of those was putting me in a low chair, not shaking my hand, sitting across a big desk and all that. And what I said to people at the time was, if someone puts you in a low chair, ask for a higher one. Just say, I've got a bad back, Chris. You don't mind, I go to the physio all the time, played a lot of sport. Do you mind if I have a larger chair? What you're really doing there, Chris, is you're flagging to the other side. We know what your game is. Don't try that on me. But the problem with that is it depends how much you want. If it's a sales negotiation, it really does depend on how much you want the deal. And therefore, you've got to decide. If they're playing games like that, you should be clocking it. And you should be thinking to yourself, well, if they're playing games like that, what's going to happen when we go to get paid? Because cash is king. Are they going to pay me? I mean, a good negotiating deal is not a good deal until the chap's payment is in your bank account.
Yeah.
So recognizing all those kind of silly games for what they are is very important. Very important.
So one of the biggest a mistake that something I was quite irritated by, but when I look at it, it was probably I have to hold the mirror up to myself. Was a negotiation involving quite a lot of money. I won't explain who the company was, but it's we were having a debate over £400,000. It was quite a sizable amount of money. And what happened was that the person I was in with, even though we'd had a chat beforehand and talked about it, we got to a point where I used the technique of going silent and suggesting, having identified some information which suggests that other people were paying a lot less than we were, and because I was part of a big company, their response had been they just felt we could pay more, and I explored that, and I asked them to reconsider the price on that basis because it was unfair. So I just went silent, and they went silent, and I sat there, and then the person I was with suddenly piped up. Of course, at this late stage, we wouldn't do anything with the price, and basically the guy I was with destroyed the negotiation because he just couldn't cope with the silence. So I just wonder what your thoughts are in just in preparing such that when you've got two of you in a negotiation, that you are aligned.
Yeah, great question, Chris. Great question. And clearly, if there's I'd say to everybody, you should take someone with you. So you've already got a negotiation team there. When there's two of you, you need a proper briefing meeting to go through what you're going to do. And when you ask the dumb is smart question, or as I call them, the Columbo question, you remember Peter Falk in the American TV Lieutenant Columbo, you go, the person on your side doesn't answer the question. You know, go, well, I don't really understand where you're coming from, Chris. Perhaps you can run that over past me again. If your colleague says, well, I understand it, you know, Chris has made it quite clear because I thought you were lying. So I want to hear you lie a second time so I can just check it out. Or it's always much more difficult sometimes to say the same lie twice than it is the first time. So it's important that you prepare. And if you're going to ask a great question like, what is the price that you've got from the competitors or something like that, that when you hold the silence, that your colleague holds the silence. I do remember being in a meeting when I was a novice negotiator, or I was reading all the books and listening to all the tapes and CDs as it was in those days. And I said something like, we can't go any lower than that, which is, my colleague said, oh yes, we can, Derek. Yeah, we can go lower than that. You can't make this stuff up, can you?
No.
But oh boy, do you learn from doing that sort of thing and that sort of thing happening to you, because we are going to make mistakes. It's fine making a mistake once as long as we learn from it. If you make it twice, it's stupid. If you do it 3 times, forget it. You're out of business. So yeah, it happened to me, and it's important that you brief it properly.
And how do you spot if people are lying to you?
Well, usually they sort of give it away, Chris, in some sort of way like I'm doing at the moment. So there's up to 10 times more hand-to-face gestures when people aren't telling the truth. There's more fidgeting. They might lean back. They might fold their arms. They generally talk slower. Now, people intuitively think that people talk faster, like that fast-talking car salesperson. They don't, because they have to think through what they're saying and the implications of it. So usually they slow their voice down. There's more ums and ahs. They'll probably move back, because in body language terms, moving back is defensive. They might fold their arms, defending their heart, etc. But people might have their arms folded because they're an introvert. They feel a bit cold. But it's you ask me a difficult question and I move back. That's a huge signal, which is almost 100% that I'm defensive about it. If I move forward, of course, and you're negotiating with me, that's a buying signal. So you're probably about to close the sale. Well, again, keep quiet, because you can only lose the sale if the sale's if I'm about to agree. So if we picked up some quick signals, the hand-to-face gestures are very important. The moving backwards and forwards very important. The nose rubbing, Pinocchio's nose grew every time he told a lie. Never forget that. You get an itchy nose because the brain's uncomfortable with what you're saying, sends a little signal around this kind of area, and for some reason we scratch it. Sorry, my dog's just come up and licked my leg at that point. And then, then this is a praying gesture. I don't really know how to answer your question, Chris. And this is a very confident gesture if I'm playing poker with you. Now, you don't know whether no, I don't think, all things considered, Chris, that's a good offer for you now. And you won't find a cheaper offer with my confident steepling gesture and a good nose rub. Then you wouldn't want to believe a word of what I was saying with that body language.
Yeah, no, I had the one with the arms behind the head, laden back on.
Yeah, well, that's kind of confident and arrogant, but it's also quite a good one. It's recommended in Amy Cuddy's video, "Fake It Till You Make It," of making your body bigger to give you more confidence. So no.
How do you deal with where I sometimes find myself maybe in a client's office or on a call with the Zoom, and it's suddenly actually, oh, Chris, could you what would your price be to coach my finance director or something like that? And you're suddenly you're not prepared for it, you're not expecting it, and suddenly you're on the spot. But you also know if you don't deal with it there and then, you might have to go away and write a proposal. And actually, it's sometimes easier to just do it in the whites of their eyes and when you see them and see the reaction. How do you handle that situation? Because I find that happens. But there's a kind of
I mean, ideally, you want to take a time out and get back to them. But if you're put on the spot like that, and so if some, you know, people often ring me up and say, what will it cost to do this or do that? And in fact, I want more information and I want to upsell them maybe some more services or coach their team, or if I speak at a conference, do a breakout session, all in the price, either upsell or downsell it. But if you get that question and you're on the spot, if, for example, I don't know, you were charging them X to coach them, I'm thinking this through. It's such a good question. You'd probably want to coach the finance director for the same figure, wouldn't you, as a favor, and show him that you've got the same deal? I mean, I was thinking originally that you want to put it up 10% or 20%, but actually I don't think you do, because the finance director is going to probably want the same deal, and you're already in with the company, so you don't want to.
If you've got different prices, it can really undermine your credibility, really, can't it?
Yeah, so I'll be delighted to do it. Of course, I'll give you the same discounted fee as I give you. You know, people tend to forget to mention that it's a discounted fee, etc.
So how do you? I mean, what? I'm just looking at. I look at Lawrence's about. You know, I probably spend my time negotiating more with teenage hairdressers over the Xbox. Frequent on a day-to-day basis, but how do you handle negotiations with your wife, or when it's close?
Carefully. And bearing in mind this has been recorded, I think that's a very unfair question, Chris. Well, I'll tell you how I do it. I think through carefully what I want and how she might react to that, and then get my timing right when I suggest it, because it's not a good idea when she's got something else on her mind or she's doing something else. So you've raised actually the issue of timing, haven't you? So with family, timing could be everything. So and then how you suggest it. So things like holidays can be pretty tricky, can't they? Where you go, restaurants, which relatives you visit, who comes at Christmas, and things like that. And then people don't think about them as a negotiation and don't even prepare or think about how they do it. And then you've got negotiations with your kids, your teenagers. They're pretty tricky. I mean, my son, who's a bit more than a teenager now, he says, "Oh, Dad, you're no good at this negotiation. You might teach it, but you know you're crap at it. Let me have a go at it for you." We got an upgrade, Chris, on British Airways. Coming back from Miami, he went to a conference with me, and we were flying World Traveller Plus. And we said, should we have a go at seeing if we can get an upgrade and use every trick in the book on the check-in lady? And so we were traveling in jeans, but we had suits on for the conference. So we went in the lavatories just before we went for check-in and changed into our suits. So we were kind of looking like a business person. And he went up, mirrored and matched the lady's body language, built rapport, asked her where she was from, and then moved in and said, "Is there any opportunity for an upgrade?" And she said, "Well, no, I don't really think so." And he then said, "Well, would it be possible for you to put us in the system in case there is?" She said, "Oh, okay, because you're nice guys, I'll do that." So that was the first thing. So we're in the system. So at the gate, if people haven't arrived, there is a possibility. So we're in the lounge, because I had a silver card, so I still got in the lounge. And we get this: would Mr. Arden and Mr. Arden come to the gate? And of course, that's the sign you probably got an upgrade. And I'm going, "Yeah, game on." Mark says to me, stop. Everyone will be looking at us. Anyway, we got an upgrade, which was worth about £5,000 for just implementing some of these tactics. Now, I think British Airways and airlines are much more on what card you've got, how many points you got, and things like that now. This was a while ago, but if you work on the basis everything is negotiable, you never know. I got my pal into Arsenal versus Tottenham FA Cup semi-final when he turned up without his ticket. It's almost unbelievable that we did it. It was just after 9/11, but we did it. It worked, and it was building rapport with one of the Chelsea stewards, because it was it was actually at Stamford Bridge, you know, because it was a semi-final on neutral ground. But I know the time's ticking by, Chris, and you're looking at the at the clock. But I
was looking at the questions as well. Damien's asked, how can you ensure balance of power in Zoom virtual negotiations? Is there any difference with virtual negotiation and being?
Yeah, I think there's more to it. I've written an article on virtual negotiations, Damien. So if you email me at action@derekarden.co.uk, I'll attach it to you. And same with anyone else, action@derekarden.co.uk. But basically, number one, it needs as much preparation. Number two, I'd say I would host the meeting. Gives you more control of the switches. Means if you want to record it, you can. Clearly, you've got to tell the other side that you're recording it, but you have the recording straight away. And if you ask the other side for the recording, they might not send it to you. You can't keep doing that. Number three is you can have an observer. Of course you can, because you have one of your colleagues watching it on Zoom somewhere else. You can take a break and a timeout and call them on the phone and come back to it. And you should always probably take a timeout on Zoom, because and I'm talking about Zoom all the time, but I mean Teams and everything else, because about 20-25 minutes is about the attention span before people need a break on electronic media. You can look the people in the eye like I'm doing with you now. It's very important to look at the camera when you're trying to persuade people. You can still drop your voice, change your body language, and you can read the other people's body language. I keep being told people can't read body language on Zoom, and I'm thinking, what are they talking about? You know, if I move back, you can see that. If I fold my arms,
you see more twitching and moving around, actually, don't you?
Absolutely. So there's seven in this article. There's 7 points. So I'd be delighted to let anybody have it.
Yeah, excellent. And then we've got a question there. Renato just put through. Do you see any different learnings maybe with other countries, India and Pakistan? Typically, do you find anything with international negotiation that we should be mindful of? Because I mean, there are differences, aren't there?
Yeah, very much so. I talk about it. I talk about it in win-win, and the one rule is that there is no rule for cultural negotiations. Every country has different cultures, and frankly, if you're going to that country or dealing with people for that country and you want to win-win, you need to understand their culture so you can put yourself into their frame of mind. It would be rude and arrogant not to understand their cultures. So I'm afraid there's and if you ask me about cultures in the UK, I'd say yeah, there's different cultures all over the place. Just go to Scotland. I worked for a bank that could only open 3 branches in Scotland because Barclays was a foreign bank in Scotland. People only dealt with Royal Bank of Scotland, Royal Bank of Scotland, and Clydesdale Bank, even though Clydesdale Bank was owned by the Bank of Australia and RBS was owned by NatWest. That was, and then we got the Northeast, Geordies, then we got Liverpool Scousers, and you need to connect with these people in different ways. And you go down to Cornwall flies its own flag and would like to break away from the UK, which is probably why the G7 conference is at the Carbis Bay Hotel in June. So the rule is, do your research, look it up on the internet, Google it on the internet, find out 1 or 2 things about the people.
That's a really good. Yeah, I think the research is key, isn't it? And I've also taken this out of the call. That with personal relationships as well. People are locked down together in lockdown. Is actually maybe when you're planning your day, if there's something you want to share that might be a little bit of a negotiation with that's important. You take a little time to think it through before you have that conversation.
And you have to be careful what questions you ask people these days. I mean, I don't know if this is the best question, but I tend to ask people, how are things? Because it's not how are you. And just so that I can get a feel for it. You want to feel for where the person is, don't you? And a lot of people are stressed, as you say. A lot of people are stressed out in their minds.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're dealing with
my daughter's on Zoom for up to 8 hours a day, working from home.
Yeah.
Tough.
Yeah. It is, yeah. I'm running a lot of coaching at the moment and some leadership programs. Some of those are all day on Zoom. It's very tiring. Although it is something. It is relaxing not to have to drive somewhere to do it, but it's different. We've got all different pressures, haven't we? We've got to be mindful of that with people. And
I think we're working longer and we're working harder, aren't we? We're working longer and we're working harder because we're not traveling. And actually, there is some benefit of traveling if you were sitting in your car listening to some relaxing music, or even on the train. I actually used to enjoy the train journey into London as long as I got a seat. Yeah. I either had a sleep and catch up with some energy, or do some vital reading. So yeah, you know,
no doubt a negotiated first class seat, no doubt. So
I did have a first class seat when I had an absolutely balmy job, just to get some sleep, actually, more than anything.
Well, thank you for that. Rupert, do you have anything you'd like to ask Derek, and do we have any?
Yeah, I have actually, and I suppose I'm asking on behalf of our clients actually, because we're very lucky within our overall community, because we're full of got lots of really nice people in there, and a lot of our clients actually are in the coaching, mentoring, training, consulting space. So we talk a lot about what we class as the 3 cogs: the lead generation, prospect nurturing, sales optimization. So, Derek, what you shared today ties in particularly well with the sales optimization piece, because we're saying that once people they started to engage on things like LinkedIn, you want to get them off the platform as quickly as possible so you can have meaningful conversations. And then you take people on a bit more of a journey, make sure there's a good mix from your point, balance from your point of view and from theirs, so they're buying into the correct product portfolio. But because we've got a community full of lots of nice people, they tend to also not be that strong on some of the closing techniques. I suppose the question I've got around this is, how can you still play to your strengths? Because a lot of the reason that people go into this space is because they are authentic and they like who they are, and they like who they have a desire to be liked by their clients and the other way around. How can people actually address this so they can perhaps be much more relaxed in the whole sales negotiation process? They can close some more of those opportunities down.
Okay, I think people get a bit too carried away with sales processes. Personally, I think opening the sales the most important thing. I think the sale should close itself. If you've got a good product, you've built rapport, you connected with the person, you've shown them all the benefits, you've given them testimonials from other people, etc., then the closing should be quite easy. But people do need a bit of help in making up their mind, Rupert. And what I say to people, and I learned this from the chief executive of Barclays, a guy called Martin Taylor, who used to lunch a lot of my clients when I was head of large corporate relationship management. And he would say something like, well, we've given Derek 2 minutes to pitch our products. That's all we ever give him. But I can say that Barclays would really like to do this piece of business with you, and Derek would be over the moon if you signed with us. So that's what he said, and that was really powerful because it was coming from the CEO, and I got the CEO often quite on. But if we're working for ourselves, I would just say, having done all the right things and not used any manipulative, pathetic tactics like, do you want a red one or a blue one? Do you want it in June or July? You know, which I think most people know about, don't they? I would say Rupert, I'd really like to do this piece of business with you. So I look forward to us going ahead and just be totally authentic, but ask for it. Now, you could say, and we all might do this, and you know, I'm pretty booked up. You should always be busy. Scarcity from the world of psychology. You should always be busy, and so therefore you could offer them 2 dates for the next call, or the date to start it, and go for it. I think if you're authentic, you're all right. If they think they're being manipulated into something, then that's much more difficult. And the problem is some people are lazy. They don't do the whole works. They don't follow up. And with a new client, I remember that statistics which said you've probably got to have 5 interactions with them before they'll go ahead if they never knew you in the first place. So that might be a phone call, that might be an email, that might be a pitch, that might be a Zoom call, but you need to keep going back. And the trick I use, if people don't answer my emails, I'll resend it I just resend it. I might resend it saying the spam. I know the spam checkers are out in force at the moment, so this may not have got through to you. You usually get an answer to the second one.
Yeah. Yeah, because people feel a bit embarrassed they haven't replied in the first place.
Yeah. And I do as well, because I've got a huge number of emails in my inbox.
Lovely.
There's a lovely little he was a guy I know in the States who dropped me Dan Cashel, who drops me every now and again something through the post, and he got a little story in there, which was to imagine. It's been a long time for me, but probably has for yourselves as well. But imagine that you're going on a hot date, and you go on this date, and it's absolutely fantastic, and it's the first time you've met this person, but you've got face to face, you've got on really, really well. Would you the following day? Would you let them ring you back, leave it and see if they ring you back, or would you pick up the phone and suggest that you go on a second date, or 3, would you ring them up and suggest that we get married tomorrow? And what he was suggesting is what most people do is they go and have a hot date. It's really good, and the following day they're suggesting that they should get married tomorrow, and they're trying to sell to them. Where actually it's a bit of a journey. You've got to go on another date, like you said, Derek, and another date, and eventually, it leads to a relationship and a profitable one. But I thought it was quite helpful. So most people just try and get married tomorrow.
Chris, what I'm puzzled about there is why wouldn't you close the sale when you gave them a kiss goodnight, if you could be as formal as that after the first one? Why wouldn't you say, I'd really love to see you again?
Well, you could do, but what I'm saying in a sale, you could do that, couldn't you?
Yeah, close the sale first, which is almost what I asked to Rupert.
It takes the stress out of it, doesn't it?
Yeah. The real trick is how to get rid of someone in 10 minutes if you've gone on a blind date and you really don't like them.
Well, my father, who's sadly not here anymore, what he did is he had somebody who doted on him, and he went on a date and he knew it wasn't right. So what he did is he asked her to sit down on a wall, and she sat down on this wall, and she thought he was going to give her a kiss, and for shoes and threw them over a fence and ran off.
You're joking. You made that up.
No, it's true. That's what he did.
But lovely. Honestly, this conversation is going to go bad from worse. That's lovely. I'm going to do a bit of a wrap up, if that's all right, just so we make sure we cover things off, and obviously we'll come back to Chris and Derek in just a second. But just a quick reminder of the Thursday sessions. Those of you who haven't been on one of these live streams before with us, obviously very grateful you've joined in. We do encourage a lot of interaction, so thanks again for that today. The online networking collaboration sessions are actually once a month, and they're always on the second Thursday of each month. And the next double session of those of the session is actually on the 11th of February. So you may want to put that in your diaries. Every other week there, it's to do with the live streams. So next week's one event which starts at 5 o'clock or 4:55, and that's obviously GMT if you're in another country. We do fundamentally believe in the importance of accelerating the deep relationship of trust, and I think this whole thing around authenticity and credibility was talked about today is really important. And I would also encourage you to, as much as possible, always think about how you can help and support others, and also refer if you can, if you're happy to do that. We recognize that running a business can be a very lonely journey, whether you're a company of one or whether you're a company of 1,000. If you are at the top, then you have all the responsibilities and burdens of the world on you, as it were, and you may not be able to confide with your colleagues. So the people like Chris, for example, are brilliant at working with people in the whole area of leadership and unlocking that potential. But actually, Business Growth Bureau as well is very much here to support our members and our community as well. So do set a reminder in Facebook and YouTube if you are enjoying these sessions, and also feel happy, if you're happy to do so, share the stream and also like the page if you're happy to do that as well. Greatly appreciated. And next week, we've got a really interesting speaker, a bit of a different theme actually. Next week, Rob Stemp is a real security expert, basically anything to do with cybersecurity, keeping your data safe, trying to protect yourself from being hacked. And a Business Growth Bureau, let's put it another way, our business bank account about 2 months ago was hacked, actually. Fortunately, they didn't get away with very much because the fraud prevention team at our bank actually spotted it. Unfortunately, they did let another one slip through, which they did actually reimburse us on. But these days, really keeping security front of mind is a really good thing. And he's going to be talking about what you can do to protect you and your business online, and some of the common threats, and what help is available to protect your business, and what you do if you become a victim of cybercrime, and how the landscape is changing. And obviously, we all know that some of these techniques for getting your data and manipulating and doing it inappropriately are getting more and more sophisticated now. So that's the next week. So Rob Stemp is a real expert in that space. The next mini conference is on the 2nd of February. That's at 2:00, and it's about bring yourselves forward, amplify your brand, and get your time back. It does tie in a lot with LinkedIn, a lot of the other strategies around that as well. If you want a little bit of a temperature gauge in terms of how well your business is doing or how well you are prepared moving forwards, now I'm going to say something a little bit controversial here, and I'm hoping I'm not going to be proved wrong. But obviously, we're in the peak of the pandemic, as we know now. A tragic number of record numbers of loss of life yesterday. Hopefully, it won't be as high again over the coming days. But if you speak to a number of people now about this, I think people's perception is generally that business will start to return to an element of normality based on how we are in the new world, as it were, around about the April timeframe. That's assuming these vaccinations do start to work. So the reason I'm particularly flagging this up is that it's really important with these things to actually start to put in place strategies to start to ride the wave. If you start planning now, then in real terms, that's almost a bit too late even now, because if you plan now and start to implement February, March time, the chances are other people have already started to put strategies in place for growth, and you could be starting to ride behind the wave. So as much as this diagnostic tool is designed, it takes about between 4.5 and 6.5 minutes to complete, but it would look at multiple aspects of your business. And as part of that, we can have an optional conversation afterwards. We can share the report with you. So the way you get to that is very simply by just going to businessgrowthbureau.tv/diagnostic, and it will take you there. And these are all accessible as well from the homepage of our website. So you can book the mini conference, the on-demand webinar. If you can't take an afternoon out, just book the on-demand webinar, which lasts just under an hour, and they are on demand, so you can watch them at any time. And obviously, that's also how you get access to these different events as well. So I know Charlotte and a number of you may well want Derek's details today. Derek's website there is derekarden.com. The phone number is 07980241185, and action@derekarden.co.uk is Derek's email address. And of course, Chris, thank you very much for your support today, and I actively encourage you to reach out to Chris anytime. And obviously, Miron and I are always here, as you know. So just coming back to run just for a moment or two, let me just move this so we can see each other again a little bit better. Muriel, obviously we haven't given you a chance to raise anything particular today. Is there something you'd really like to ask Derek, or a particular point you would like to make?
There's nothing I'd like to ask Derek. I think what he shared was really very clear. But I love what you said about have some credit in the emotional bank account. I think that's wonderful. And lowering and softening your voice is a good technique. So I'm going to try and use that from now on.
You're going to try that on me, Muriel, aren't you?
Yes, Rupert, I think it's too right time.
For anyone who doesn't know, is new to this call, Muriel has to have almost as much patience with me as my dear wife, who has stuck with me for 25, 30 odd years. Not 30 years yet, but no, well done. So, Chris, any sort of closing thoughts?
I just wanted to, Pradeep said there on there, any ideas of where you can get more information. from. I mean, I'm plugging this book, Derek's book, because it's a really good book, and it is the book on negotiation. It was the book that Pearson scoured around the world to find somebody to write. So, I would say for the cost of whatever this one said, $12.99 on the back, whatever it is, it is absolutely probably the cheapest way to get an access into Derek Arden's brain. The other way into that world. The other way, of course, Derek. I know Derek does help a lot of people who've got big negotiations. So you find yourself with a big negotiation, and it's important. You can bring somebody like Derek in to help with that, and then obviously he's got his website. But I just want to mention that it is a really good resource. I generally mean that, and I've read it, and it's probably the book. If I was to write a book on negotiation, I'd have liked one to turn out like that. So, well done, Derek. Really, yeah. But I always enjoy talking to Derek. It's
thanks, Chris. Can I just say a couple of things very quickly?
Yeah, please do. Love it, Derek.
It's $12.99, but if you go on Amazon now, the Kindle version is probably about £7, and the book is probably about £10. So, and I get about 50p of that. So don't think you're making me rich or I'm selling it. I'm passionate about people getting better negotiations, win-win negotiations, etc. But if anyone wants to email me, I'll send them a copy of a book I wrote a long time ago with my pal Peter Thompson, 117 handy haggling hints, and I can email that to you if you send me an email. But it's a great pleasure to be on. Rupert, I think we could have covered a lot of more things, and Chris. So if you ever want me to join you again, and your listeners want me to, then I'd be delighted. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Derek. That's certainly a perfect guest and a brilliant introduction, Chris. So thank you very much for that. Well, I would say we've run out of time, really 1 minute over. So I think we've done very well today. So thank you very much for everyone who's joined us today. Do just join us next week if you can. As Rob's talk's going to be really fascinating, really interesting. And also, if just a bit of a shout out actually as well. If in fact, this question to you as well, Derek and Chris, for that matter. If you've got someone who'd really like to introduce as a really good guest speaker, particularly if it's business focused, we'd really love to hear from you. So do just drop us an email. We tend to plan these things between 1 to 3 months ahead, simply because that way it takes the pressure off. But we're always pleased to hear. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone. We look forward to seeing you next week. Yeah, take care. Cheers then. Thanks. Bye.